The Honourable Phil Goff.
Mr Chairman, I've got some questions for the Minister and the Chair relating to clause 94 of the bill, which deals with the question of migrant levies. And we haven't had a lot of discussion in committee about migrant levies, but as the spokesperson for ethnic communities, I'm particularly concerned at the implications of the change that this clause makes for those people who are coming to New Zealand. We have long had a requirement that there is a levy paid by migrants who are coming to New Zealand, but that has been on the basis of an understanding that a migrant pays a levy that is then reinvested into the new migrant community to pay for English language training, to help that new migrant individual or family to understand the customs of the country, the language of the country, to give that migrant the chance to settle as quickly as possible into New Zealand society. And for all of those reasons, I have not been a critic of the migrant levy that existed in the current Act. But there has been some serious changes in clause 94, and I want to refer the Minister to the Legislation Advisory Committee's comments on the changes that have been made. And they said, I think it's worth reading to the Minister what the Legislation Advisory Committee says about the changes in this particular clause. They say that the existing migrant levy is narrowly focused, raises about $4.5 million a year, or 2% of the budget. The current levy's purposes are expressly restricted to funding settlement programs for migrants and research into migrant issues. That's exactly what I've been explaining to the House, Mr Chairman. They say the existing levy is clearly not a tax, but the change that the government has made in clause 94 makes the levy into a tax. This is a new tax, a tax being smuggled in through this legislation, and one that has not been explained to the migrant community. To go back to what the Legislation Advisory Council has said about this, they say, in contrast to the existing levy, the proposed immigration levy could be construed as a tax. Now, they are not a political body, Mr Chairman. The Legislation Advisory Committee has advised on this bill and advised on things that they regard as poor legislative and statutory practice. And they say this is poor practice. They say clause 94 broadens the potential purposes for the levy considerably, including helping pay for any immigration system infrastructure and operations, and funding the Immigration Advisors Licensing Authority. In principle, they say, general expenditure should preferably be met from tax revenue or from properly targeted fees for services when they can be identified. So what we've got here is a fundamental change that the legislation is making without the government giving justification for why that change is here. If you're going to levy a tax, call it a tax. Explain to the migrants that you are now taxing them to pay for the basic functions of the immigration service. But don't come into the House and smuggle a piece of legislation like this into the House that detracts from the levy that helps people to settle in New Zealand and requires the migrants to pay for a fundamental core government service. And when the Legislation Advisory Committee, chaired by Sir Grant Hammond, makes a criticism of this magnitude, the Minister needs to take it seriously. So I would like the Minister to take the next call and explain why the old levy, helping people to settle in New Zealand, a justifiable objective that the migrant themselves could be expected to contribute to, suddenly becomes a tax to pay for the basic bureaucracy of the immigration section of MB. That is a serious change. It has not been advertised as such. It has not been referred to by the Minister in the speeches that have been made. It's not been justified to the House. And I'm saying that in this committee stage, The Minister has the opportunity to get to his feet and explain why that change has been made.
Order.
Chair.
I call Andrew Bailey.
Mr. Chair, it's